Hello, we're back again to have another great conversation with one of our early childhood leaders in the state. And I'm so happy to welcome Holly Spivey. She's the Head Start Collaboration Director and Education Policy Advisor for the Governor of Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves. Holly, thank you for joining us today for our conversation.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is for you just to give us a little personal background about how you ended up in this chair and where you started and what was your interest in choosing early care and education as your career.
Okay. So I taught in the Jackson Public School District for about 8 years. And after a year after I had my first child, I had reached out to my former principal, who at the time was the assistant superintendent for the Jackson Public School District, and I asked her to help me just to find another job that was a little bit more flexible. And at the time, I thought it would be in the school district. And what the job offer that she brought back to me, or the opportunity, was to homeschool 2 students that were obviously not my own children, and one of them had a disability. So, and he had dyspraxia. So I did that. I interviewed for the job, and it was 2 different families. And so I homeschooled their students for 3 years, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And prior to that, I had taught 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade at different times. And so after that, I was approached by a lady that I worked with. I actually did an internship in her classroom in the Clinton Public School District. And I was approached by her and just asked, she told me that she was going to be retiring. And she said that she was the Head Start Collaboration Director. And she said, would you like to interview for my job? And I said, sure, and so I did. And if you work for the state, then you'll know this. A year later, I got the job. That's how long it took to kind of like go through the process of interviewing with Governor Barber and his chief of staff. And so a year later, I got the job. So in 2009, I came on as the Head Start Collaboration Director.
So you've seen some changes as a result of different governors. You've worked under several different governors then, since you've been there since 2009. And now your role has expanded if you're also the Education Policy Advisor. So what part of your job what does that mean in terms of what you're doing in your job from an education advisor?
So, when Governor Reeves was elected, he had certain, campaign promises that he, wanted to honor. And so I get part of that just means me looking at that and then working with, the Senate and the House to, to kind of advocate for what he wants. It's, and that's in addition to everything else that goes on too. So I do think that it's very interesting, because had I come on and never done this before, like never worked in a governor's office, or I would probably be struggling a lot to kind of get my job done. But because I was just the Head Start Collaboration Director and did not have that extra role as being the Education Policy Advisor, I did that for 10 or 11 years. It allowed me to really develop relationships with people outside of the governor's office. And so when I became the Education Policy Advisor too, I was able to really reach out to those folks and, get their advice, or or if I needed help with anything like legislatively, they could help me with that as well.
So your plate is very full and stays that way.
It is, but and then also with COVID, that with the governor's discretionary funds to add on to that. But like I said, I also have like some really good people who are always willing to help me if I need help with something.
Well, I appreciate the fact that your experience has been wide, and that you're able to address and speak with people on policy issues from not only living them yourself, but also being in for 11 years, as you say, in the position to see the bigger picture, which sometimes if we are just focused on one thing, we don't necessarily see outside of that one little area. Now, when we talk about Head Start collaboration, tell us a little bit more about what does that mean? What does collaboration mean when we say Head Start collaboration director?
Okay, so there is one of me in every state. And so in some cases, that person may be located in a Department of Education or a Department of Human Services. I think we even have a few that are located in community action agencies. The state of Mississippi is the only one where the collaboration director is located in the governor's office, but also reports directly to the governor. I do think there are 2 other states where there is a collaboration director in a governor's office, but it's just a few layers down, if that makes sense. So what, broadly, what I'm kind of tasked with doing is representing Head Start at the state level. And so that is, of course, working with the directors and also the Head Start Association, but then also representing them on, if there are boards or councils, things of that nature, then, that I will represent them in that way as well. We also, collaboration directors have a list of priorities that they must, kind of address throughout a 5-year grant period. And some of those include like early Head Start childcare partnerships, workforce, homelessness, professional development, kindergarten entry assessment, and those are just a few. So, in that way, what I am tasked with doing is also looking outside of our office to see how, like, some different opportunities that Head Start can collaborate with others, and also this office too.
Well, you mentioned that the Head Start Association, and I think a lot of people that I come in contact with that are not necessarily educators, they think there's one Head Start in Mississippi.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so could you kind of explain how this is set up so that once again,
Sure.
we can sort of get people more educated about how Head Start, the system, how it works?
Okay, so this is not, I hope that this is a good way to explain it, but this is often how I have explained it to legislators or other folks who were, just not really clear on this. And so I liken it to a school district. And so Head Start is like a school district. And in our state, you have 82 counties, and Head Start is represented in all of those 82 counties. And so, you have that each one of those grantees. So in our state, we have, I think it's 17 or 18. We had some changes, so I have to go back for that final count here recently. So each one of those grantees would be like a school district, and so that executive director or that Head Start director would be like the superintendent. And then at the Head Start Center, you would have like the person that's there is like the center director would be like the principal. So the principal is like the principal, the center director is like the principal. But in many times the principal is able to make that final decision for whatever is going on in their school. However, oftentimes that center director, may need to check and double check with their Head Start director or the executive director with regards to a final decision. And so all of the money, it's federal to local, and so all of the money flows from the United States Department of Health and Human Services Administration of Children and Families directly to that grantee. And
so each of the grantees makes a request or writes a grant proposal that looks at how many children they serve and all of the things that they need to be able to serve to meet the Head Start standards and guidelines. And I just would like to say on the Head Start's behalf, your behalf, that the federal requirements for Head Start are stronger than what Mississippi's licensed child care centers require. So there's certain ratios, there's certain requirements in curriculum and other things that our licensing for just the state would not require. So I think it's important for people to understand that Head Start has two sets of regulations. They have the state licensing, plus they have federal requirements that they're also held accountable to meet. Could you just give us a little background on the difference between early Head Start and Head Start?
Okay, so early Head Start serves pregnant women and then children that are 6 weeks of age up until they are up to 3. And then at 3, they would transition from the early Head Start program to the Head Start. And Head Start serves children that are 3 to 5.
And so with the numbers of children that are served in early Head Start, if I understand this correctly, it's a smaller number than the Head Start services.
That's right. It's a smaller number of pregnant women and then infants and toddlers. Yes.
And I know that in some areas, not very many, but that we do have some Head Start centers that are not just center based. In other words, Head Start can also be home based, or they can work with home visitors. Is that in part correct?
Or they may be located in they may have a classroom in a public school. Just however it is that they have deemed that to be the most beneficial for their community or for their area.
You mentioned the collaboratives, and Dr. Jill Dent has already has spoken to us and will be on this series, but I think it's important to note that Head Start is a part of collaboratives in most communities. And so they are, again, required to follow the Head Start requirements, the licensing requirements, and then whatever the collaborative expects of them to do, so that they're of the same type of requirements that if they were in a public school collaborative. Correct? Is that pretty well how to summarize that? So that I think there's been confusion over the years about Head Start and how does it get funded, where does it land, how do you get it, and so forth. So I think this has been helpful for people to understand that this is a direct payment from the Department of, the U.S. government to the particular location, the Head Start agency. If you were going to have a crystal ball and look at 3 to 5 years ahead, what would you hope that you'd be able to say, or if we came back 5 years from now and said, well, now Holly, a few years ago, this is what things were like, what would you wish, and this is a wish list, but what would you hope that you would be able to talk about?
Goodness, that's okay. So I think that what I would hope or wish is that I guess number one, that we as adults or the folks that are in charge, that they continue and I guess really everybody who comes behind me, I guess that they are continuing to collaborate and they are continuing to all work together and really continuing to think about putting the child first and the family first. And that's something that I would hope to continue to see. And also that the good pieces that are in place currently, that those also continue. Does that make sense? Like, things that we have that work really well right now, I would love to see those things continue and be improved upon. I would also like to see all children and families being served. in our state, all of them. And, and I think that a lot of that comes, or, I feel like that is possible at some point, but I feel like, that when you have the right folks in place, doing what it is that they are supposed to do, that's something that I feel like could absolutely happen. And also when they're focused on the child and the family.
You made a very interesting comment, or your phrasing was really good. Those who come behind me, and that's where I am right now, and I'm very encouraged by seeing younger people like you coming behind me in works that I've tried to start and do. And I think one of the issues that I would put forth in your crystal ball is leadership training for individuals in early care and education who can have the and I say sense in terms of common sense, but also knowledge about how young children learn, and the importance of the comprehensive system approach that Head Start's known for. So I hope you'll add that leadership piece in there, because I do think that it's going to be for sustainability that you mentioned, that there's going to have to be strong leadership for many years to come. So thank you so much for talking. Is there something else you'd want to add?
Well, no, I was going to agree with you. And I was also going to say that I think that there's so much that, people that will come behind me can learn from, not just people who've been doing it for a very long time, but also people who, are kind of in the middle. Like, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. And so I agree with you. And I hope that I would also hope that leadership training is something that could be, definitely have some importance placed on it and some value, because I think that that's very important.
Well, you've just given yourself a whole bunch more jobs to do in the next 5 years. But thank you so much for talking with us today, and we'll keep in touch through the session. And if there's other times that you'd like to talk with us and we could give you that time, we certainly would. So again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.